Hi everybody, this is Grant here from Dome Music Technologies. I just wanted to create a wee video highlighting the new Poly Performance Controller module that was just released last week. Instead of doing a sort of step-by-step and control-by-control tutorial, I thought I would kind of give you some insight into why I decided to develop the module in the first place. Um, Basically, what did it give me that I didn't have previously? Um, and I think basically the entire motivation behind it is can be summed up in one word, and that word is Vangelis. Probably no surprise to many people, but I think the work that Vangelis did, particularly with the CS80, is just unlike anything else. And no matter what I've tried to do in the past with different synths, I've never managed to get quite that level of expression that Vangelis managed to achieve particularly with his use of the CS80. Um, so what I've got here is a polyphonic patch under voltage modular, and it's basically the layout of the patch is quite straightforward. You've got poly oscillators on sawtooth waveform going into a polyphonic high pass filter on 12 decibel per octave setting. The high pass filter then goes into a low pass filter, again on a 12 decibels per octave setting. That the output from the filter then goes into a poly voltage controlled amplifier, which is in turn driven by a poly envelope generator. Um, and that is effectively the architecture of one of the channels of the CS80. It's a dual channel synth, 8 voices per channel, and the two channels worked in parallel. But a lot of the sounds used the same voicing, or roughly the same voicing, on the two channels, and it just used the sort of the multiple oscillators to thicken up that one sound in a kind of chorus type fashion. So what I've got here is just a very simple sound. So I'll just give you an example of what it sounds like. So currently there's no movement on the filters, they're just sitting at a set cutoff rate, and there's a bit of keyboard tracking on both of them. The high pass filter is 100% keyboard tracking, and the low pass filter is less than 100%, so it's about 76 at the moment. That means it doesn't track completely up at the top end, so it's slightly duller at the top end than it is at the bottom. So down at the bottom you've got quite a rich sound, but up at the top it's quite mellow. But what I've got here is a poly amplifier, and it's passing through the poly envelope output into the cutoff frequency of the two filters. So if I increase the gain here, and you can hear that because it's got quite a slow attack on it, you can actually get a bit of touch sensitivity by just playing the notes very quickly. It only fades in for a slight amount before going away, so in order to get the filters to really open up, if you just hold down the note a bit longer. So you've already got a bit of expression control just by changing the way you play. You can introduce further modification of it by taking some of the velocity component and putting that into the CV modification of the poly amplifier, so that the depth of the envelope generator depends on how hard you hit the key initially. So if I just bump up the sensitivity here, if I play it very slowly so that there's hardly any velocity information, then there's hardly any movement on the filters. But if I play it hard, then it opens up the filters quite a lot. But the sound is still a bit weak, to say the least. So I've introduced a bit of LFO modulation on the pitch. Now this is just monophonic modulation, so it goes into this attenuator, cuts down the level quite a bit, and then the overall depth of it is affected by the mod wheel, and then the output goes into the mono CV of the oscillators. So by using the mod wheel, you get a wee bit of added expression. But in order to make the sound a bit more full, a bit more interesting, we just use a tried and tested technique of sticking in the chorus unit. And of course, good old universe-sized reverb. And what I'm using here is the Rware and Air Windows universe filter, so that's completely free of charge. Chris Neuberger of Rware took the Air Windows algorithm, which is open source, public domain, and created this this module completely free of charge for anyone that wants it, which is fantastic, and it's just got a great sound. So already we've got quite a lot of expression control built into that sound, and it's all basically coming from the playing technique, with the exception of the mod wheel for the vibrato. So what I wanted to do was then use aftertouch instead of this velocity and envelope control to affect the opening and closing of the filters. So just take that out. So it doesn't matter how hard to hit it or how slowly, you've just got the filters in their closed positions here. So what I did initially in order to try and get this was use the monophonic aftertouch, and what I've got here is the monophonic aftertouch is being attenuated by this simple amplifier here. So I'll just unfreeze this display, and what you've got is the aftertouch is the red trace, and I'm going to show you another trace later on, but for the time being we're just looking at the mono aftertouch. And if we patch that into the filters, so the green trace is coming out of this small rat module, and the red trace is just coming from the raw aftertouch controller itself. So because the attenuation is at 100%, then the red and green traces are coincident. That's green trace is at half the level of the red, but we'll just kick it up to 100% so that we can get these extreme. So that's the mono aftertouch going directly into the high pass filter and low pass filters cutoff control. So indeed it does give you that kind of instantaneous touch control over the opening and closing of the filters. But unfortunately, there are two things wrong with this. The first one is that the sensitivity of most keyboards to aftertouch is pretty coarse, or at least my ability to control it is quite coarse. So in order to get a nice smooth attack, you've really got to concentrate all your efforts on getting that evolution of the sound right. And if you just lose concentration for a millisecond, it goes haywire, especially if you're trying to play other stuff on top. So one way to get around this is to introduce a slewing control, which is why I've got the small rat here. So I'll just, it's currently in tracking mode, so I'll switch it to the mode whereby it's slowed down both whenever the input voltage is rising through the rise time knob here, and when it's decaying when the control voltage is dropping. So as you can see, the green trace is an awful lot smoother, even though the red trace, which is the raw aftertouch, is going all over the place very abruptly. And you can change these timing controls so that it reacts differently if you want it to be a bit more responsive to your touch. And I'm just going to bring down the range of it, because it is tending to go a bit stratospheric, the filters, so if I just press it down as hard as I can, I think that's about as far as I want to open it up. So that's not bad at all. Gives you quite a nice sense of sort of expression and being in very intimate control of the sound as it evolves over the course of the note. But of course, the big problem is still that every note is affected in exactly the same way. So if you're busy doing something down at the bottom of the keyboard, then as soon as you do something up at the top, it's going to be affected in exactly the same way. And vice versa, so I'm playing top notes and holding down the top notes, and the lower one is being affected as well. So basically what the Poly Performance controller does when you put it to the aftertouch position and feed it into the filters. So I'll take out the monophonic version and I'll patch in the aftertouch here. So what's happening here is that this module is taking in the aftertouch controller, which is just mono still, but it's only applying it to the last note that's played. And you can see the different voices here being called up as I play different notes. It will select which is the current last note played. So this low E flat is on voice number 6, and because you've got a blue LED here, it's showing that this is the channel that the aftertouch is being applied to. And the attack and release times are just the same as the rise and fall times on the small rat. So this shows you the raw value of the aftertouch controller, and this shows you what the actual voltage is that's going out to voice number 6. So if I hold down that low E flat and then play a top E flat, you can see that the last note played becomes the new last note played and the old one starts fading towards 0. So there are 3 different modes for the key priority. So you've just seen last note priority, whereby it's only the last note that has control over the the aftertouch amount. So that's a low E flat, and for as long as that's the last note, then whatever you do with the aftertouch gets sent only to it. And then as soon as you play a new note, even if you're holding down the old E flat, then this new note now has control over the aftertouch, and it doesn't affect the previous note. Now you can hear quite an abrupt start to that note there. That sort of whack, whack. That's because on the attack phase of the note, we've got it resetting to 0 every time. What you can do is put it to voice, whereby it will pick up from where the release phase has got to. So there are good reasons for using the 0 attack mode. There are good reasons for using the voice attack mode. It's purely down to the application of the particular patch that you're working on. And the third mode is current, whereby it will immediately start on the current value of the aftertouch position. So if I play a low C and then bring the aftertouch down to about 50% here, then whenever I press a new note, it should immediately go to that same level. And then if I play a low note, again, and now I've almost completely released the key, and if I play a new note, it should start off at that same level. And the three key modes are last note played, all held notes, so I'm playing a low C. If I then play a high C, then they're both affected to the same extent for as long as I hold the key, which is different from the mono-aftertouch situation, even if you're slowing it through the small rat. So I play a low C, and I go to full pressure. When I play the next key, it will rise up to that level at the attack rate. So if I lengthen the attack rate, and then it decays away at the release rate. And similarly, the release phase has three different modes to work with. 0 means that it will start heading back down towards 0 volts as soon as you release the key. So it's starting to go back down to 0. Hold means that it will retain the value when you actually release the key. So So that's continuing there, even though the key has been released. So if I just put a long amplitude release on it. So we're working on this voice here. So I increase the pressure, then release the key, and it's being held there. So if I build up to a high envelope position on this low note here, so what I'll do is I'll open it right up, and then I'll release the low note and then play a higher note immediately with no aftertouch, and then it will show you that the old note decays away with full filter opening, and the new one's introduced with the filter shut. And the final mode is called peak, and what it does is it keeps a track of the highest note, the highest value that you've reached with aftertouch while the note was held down. So it will never go below the highest value. So if I just monitor what the if you watch what the aftertouch is actually doing here, and then what it's doing on the monitor board here, you'll see that it always keeps increasing up the way. So if I now take aftertouch completely off, it stays up at the peak value. Go a bit higher, it follows it up the way. Take it off again, then go up a bit further. And then that's key release, and it just stays there. So I think that's quite a lot to take in, but you can see that by using all of these controls in an intelligent way, you can get a lot of really nice expression out of it, which almost makes you feel like you're playing a Poly aftertouch keyboard. Not quite, but it's definitely getting there. Okay, so thanks for watching. I know it's been a long haul, but I think it gives you some insight into why I developed the Poly Performance Controller and what it lets you do that was impossible to do with mono-aftertouch. So I haven't covered any of the other functionality, but aftertouch was the main reason for my developing it, and I think this is hopefully giving you some insight into why it's there, what it does, and how it does it. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.